Welcome. Wow, so many people on a Friday morning at TechDays after hopefully a decent amount of beers yesterday. Did you have enough beers? Okay. Oh, you get the gist. Okay. Good. So, I would like to take you back a little bit. 10 years ago, and you might remember that I showed this picture. Did anyone remember this picture? Wow, one. Cool. It was actually for a session that I did back in the days, watching, and the thing was like, it was a PowerShell session, and I was like, how am I going to do this? Because, watching someone do PowerShell is as boring as watching an old man eat. And then 10 years later, 2024, I was doing a telemetry session. And I was like, it's pretty much the same. Doing telemetry, not the most interesting topic you can do. What I will try to do is make it a little bit more interesting. So it doesn't have to be boring to watch someone old eat. And by the way, these days we have AI. 10 years later, I can make Luke smile. It's a little bit dark up here, but anyway, it's cool. Let's cut the crap. I want to set the stage a little bit, some expectation. I will just try to explain things about telemetry in my own words. I'm not going to do the full official vocabulary, and I probably will mispronounce stuff. Yeah, I will show how I am using it today, and I've been using telemetry quite a lot the last couple of months. I will use real-world examples, including live data. Just imagine how to do a session on telemetry and then fake the data. I wasn't able to do that, so I will use live data. So you're going to see my customers and my problems. And I don't know what I'm going to see, so because it's live. So I have no idea. I looked into it yesterday a little bit, so I might be hesitant at some points. So I will show some ideas as well, things that I think would be interesting, but it's not fully implemented yet. You will see a disgusting amount of KQL. That's a warning. I apologize already. And an unhealthy amount of demos, yes. Lame jokes, if you go to a Waldo session, that's what you're going to get. Sorry about that. So, and some amateuristic visualizations. But maybe the best thing about this session is whatever you will see today, you will get. Yeah, you will be able to use whatever I am showing, like after this session. I'm quite sure that's going to be, at least some of the pieces will be interesting. All right, there's one more thing. Apple would say, I would say one more promise. And the promise is no AI. I basically just threw it out. So let's dive into it. So what is telemetry for Business Central? Well, in a nutshell, it's an event viewer. Yeah, do you know event viewer? That's half of the people. Everyone knows event viewer, obviously. Let's call it event viewer on steroids. It's a lot more. It's something we can very efficiently gather data from. It catches all the usages, well, lots of the usages of whatever and whoever is using Business Central. And we capture that for only one reason, to gain insights. Insights in a very different range of things we need to get insights of. Yeah? And officially, Microsoft will show this, just to be, let's say, interesting. I don't do that. So, do you know what this is? Okay, let me explain why you are here. This is Business Central. And Business Central obviously is being used by people. Not just people, we also use it with, let's say, with background processes, job queues. We also use it with web services, external connections. We use it with Excel, maybe. and Power Automate and whatnot. So there is a lot of usages that we have that has to do anything with Business Central. These usages we are going to capture. Let's say capture in something that we call application insights. That's happened to be on Azure. That's not a coincidence, obviously. So cool, now we have a service that is capturing all that. Now just imagine we can gain insights on whatever we have captured. That's going to be the next question. How do we gain insights on all of this data? Yeah, well, I will show you a few things. Power BI, KQL, that's absolutely not the only thing that you can use to gain insights. Whatever, it is basically just a database, whatever you can use to get insights on that database, what works for you. I will show what I use. Up until 3 weeks ago, it only said KQL Power BI, and since 3 weeks it also says ADE. And I will go a little bit further into that, actually a lot further into that. That's going to be one of the main things that we will be showing. Thank you, Duilio. And obviously at some points when we get insights and we are able to get to the interesting data that, let's say, that we would like to get notified from, like if a job queue crashes or errors out or does something, maybe I want to get an alert at that point. So maybe that also should be interesting, okay, or possible. So let's get started. Started is actually quite easy. You just create that service, that application insights service endpoint, let's call it, and then you are going to set it up. You set it up on multiple levels. There was actually 2 levels of telemetry that we can set up in Business Central. Either we set it up on the service, yeah, and that's typically the service level telemetry. Things that might happen, external connections that are calling Business Central, or we call out to something, code that's being executed, slow running queries, deadlocks that happens, and these kind of things. And we have app-related telemetry. So just, are you ISVs? Are there ISVs in the room? Yeah, let's hope you have multiple customers. And maybe even customers you do not manage yourself, just managed by other partners. You still want to capture how your product is being used. Yeah, that's up-level telemetry. You can set up in the app JSON an endpoint, and that's kind of like the up-level telemetry. So yeah, quite easy. I'm not going to show you that, but question I always get, like, yeah, but we are a VAR. Are you a VAR as well? Not too many, so you don't really manage customers? Wow, do we manage customers? Yeah, of course. We have a lot of customers, like in our case, it's close to 100 customers that we have on Business Central. How do you manage that? Are we going to set up a telemetry endpoint per customer? Is that doable? Can we manage that? Can we set that up? Well, what I would suggest, again, I'm just sharing what we do, how we are using telemetry. And actually, for our customers, for actually the entire company, we only have these endpoints. Just a few. Yeah. And sometimes you get the questions. Okay, I will just explain them first. So you see the AI. AI is not AI, it's application insights. We are not in the guessing game here, in the facts game. But in any case, AI, customer NSD, that's the one where all customers are sending their service level telemetry to. Yeah. The nice thing is we're gathering all of that in one endpoint, so we are able to get pretty easy statistics over multiple customers. We can compare customers. What is the slowest page in average for all customers, or maybe for one customer, compared to the rest of the customers, or 2 customers, or stuff like that, for our product. And these are interesting statistics. If you would set up an endpoint per customer, that would be quite difficult to do. Yeah? And then you get sometimes the question like, yeah, but me, I'm a customer, I demand my own endpoint. I want to see telemetry of the app that I don't understand, so send it to me. Well, you can, for now, set up one endpoint. It's either to the customer's app insights, let's say, or to yours. I'm quite strict on that. Like, if you want me to support you, I get the telemetry. It's as simple as that. Customers are not going to, let's say, reason or interpret an application they are not comfortable with to understand in the back end. We understand Business Central. As a consultant, as a developer, we are able to interpret that data. So, I'm quite strict in that, okay? If you want your data, do your own implementation kind of thing. Okay, and then we have others. We have the Distri apps, that's our internal product. So that's the app level telemetry, whatever we set up for the product. Now, that product has 50 apps. So all of these 50 apps go to one endpoint, yeah? The idea there is, again, whatever happens with Distri, when did we upload to app source, whatever validation is happening or went wrong, that's the endpoint where we will check app source validation issues, for instance. Same for product builds, it's another product. And then you see the Distri apps NST. That is, again, something that we would be are able to set up. It's basically our test system for the product. I did not want to send that telemetry to, let's say, customers or even the app-level telemetry, because that's really not. App-level telemetry is live data. Test system telemetry is test data. I didn't want to mingle that data either. Second to last, you see the PTE apps. Even for custom development, we are able to set up app-level telemetry. And I would strongly suggest to do so, because again, you can get the typical app telemetry for your PTEs, right? Any custom development, whatever. Let's say the customer complains today, all of a sudden that things go wrong. Well, you can simply check, like, did we publish an app, our custom development at that customer today, right? These are typical things that you can get from that telemetry. The last one that you see, the test is just a test. I mean, that's for our internal development. Just let's say that if we set up our own custom signals that we want to test that, we just set up that endpoint and then we send there. Okay, why does telemetry matter for developers? Well, simply said, it has a lot of metrics. You see a lot what's going on in your database, and obviously that's going to be the topic of the rest of the session, so it's kind of like, yeah, all in one here. We will see the slow running queries, we will see API calls and all that. We can see custom telemetry as well. We can use custom telemetry. I will show you a few ideas today on what I think would be really interesting. We can see usage information. I have some stories about that I can share. And you can get alerted about that as well. So, all of this is gathered in that API or that AI endpoint, that application insights endpoint. What I also sometimes call a haystack. Like, okay, now we have here some data. And there are two things with that haystack. There are either needles in there or not. And if there are needles in there, we would probably want to find them as well. Yeah? So where are the needles? That's kind of like it. And the rest of the session is going to be about identifying this exact thing. Yeah? Finding that needle. So, in order to do that, we obviously need to understand what we have or what we can expect from all of that data. And I try to categorize that a little bit. Well, not me, I did use some kind of copilot for this. ChatGPT. Just sent the entire web page on signals there, categorize please. And then it makes sense. So, in terms of user interaction and experience, we can see all errors. Everything. All errors we capture in telemetry. So you can really analyze interesting stuff about your product. What is the most common error that happens with that extension, caused by this extension? And maybe we can act on that. We can create an actionable error to solve that error, or maybe give a little bit more information in that error with the error info, and so on and so on. We can improve the product. We can maybe put some work in the onboarding stuff. Do you know what I mean with onboarding? Yeah, me neither, actually. Next, we have this performance monitoring and troubleshooting stuff, obviously. That's a big part, especially for developers. We need to know what is slow. And I think still we have that feeling Business Central is slow. Do you have that feeling? Yeah, unfortunately, too many claps. We have that feeling Business Central is slow, and I promise you, most of the times, it's you and me. It's us, our code, that makes it slow. It's the way it is. It's the apps that we install from ISVs. In that case, it's them, of course. It's our own apps, and it's our own custom development, usually. Microsoft is pretty good in writing their app as fast as at all possible. Pretty good. Not always good, but pretty good. And usually, it's us that slow down or causes that extra slowness in the system. In any case, we also have the security and authorization. So anyone who already set up telemetry must have seen these. Yeah, a web service was successfully authenticated. And you get a crap load of those. For any kind of authorization, you get that signal. And they are mostly in the way and all that, and you would like to avoid them, for instance. And you get these application lifecycle and deployment signals. Any kind of app you install, you see in telemetry. Yeah? The version of the app you see, when it was installed, the problem, like an upgrade problem that you would have. You see it all in telemetry. And then integration communication, yeah, some job queues, email, the integration part that you have with sales. There is a lot you can get, and all of that is being stored in application insights. So, obviously, now, next challenge is that we need to gain insights. Yeah, and that is where we turn to the tools that I mentioned, like Power BI, and you will see I'm very uncomfortable with Power BI. The people that were in my workshop the past couple of days, they noticed that very dearly. Power BI, yeah, you'll see. But anyway, we get it out of the box. We get it for free from Microsoft. Well, free is between quotes. And we are able to use that to gain that easy go-to insights, like whatever. If I'm not comfortable with telemetry, maybe I can already see something in Power BI. So let's look at that for a minute. So, author of this app that I will show is Microsoft, and it is free. I should actually quote-unquote free. It is an app on Power BI, but you kind of like need a Power BI license to be able to install an app in Power BI. So yeah, you need a license for that. But in any case, let me just show you quickly. So it's actually quite easy to install. Let me just go. If you're in Power BI, again, I have a pro license for that to be able to do that. There is a trial you can use as well. For 30 days, you are really free and using that for free. And if you try to find Business Central, you get all of these apps from ISVs and all that. The one you really want is the one with 24 5 stars. I mean, they call it Microsoft 365 Busy. And then you have here, Microsoft 365 Busy. And here, Microsoft 365 busy. I mean, come on. Just call it usage or something, and then we can actually search for it. In any case, when you open this app, you see the real and the big name. Thank you for being slow, I can drink. So it's usage analytics. You simply get it, install it, done. Yeah? It's as easy as that. So maybe just let's do it because it's that easy. Yeah, in any case, I already pre-did this, so I'm going to open one that I already installed. And this is pretty much what you get, a pre-made report. On the left, some tabs that you probably recognize, like how is my Business Central being used? What are the errors? There was the message that I lost anyway. A performance tab, like how can I look in, what is the performance? How was my app performing, or my Business Central performing, and some administration stuff to look into different things, job queue, index changes, company changes, and so on. You will see again that I'm very uncomfortable with this. It comes a little bit down. This I wanted to show you. So the next step you would take is connect your data, obviously. You need to connect, out of the box you will just get demo data. Yeah? So you connect this to your data, and what you typically do, you just from your application insights key, you get your app API access, you copy the application ID, you paste it here, and you're able to basically connect it to your application insights if you validate it with your credentials. Obviously, you need access to that data. There's a lot more to say about this report, like one thing that I didn't know, but now I know, that you can do some kind of AAD tenant mapping, because, I mean, out of the box, Telemetry will show only AAD tenant IDs, a GUID, to identify your customer. It's not that easy to work with. If you would like to create a mapping, you could say, like, this ID is that customer, and you can get, like, domain names for your customer. You can also exclude, or, include environments based on this ID. So, to come back to that, can the customer access their data? This would be an option that you set up the Power BI report and only include that AD tenant ID. Honestly, I wouldn't do that because it's just a setting, it's just a mapping kind of thing. If they disable that mapping, they get all the data from other customers as well, and I wouldn't be doing that, honestly. In any case, this is what you get, and obviously it's a lot. You can already go quite deep into whatever is going on the system. Error messages, the most common error messages. What I used this a lot for is, I don't really have the right report open, but that doesn't really matter. The long-running SQL queries, and then have a look, the day-by-day look maybe, and the end, like how am I improving my long-running SQL queries. In this case, I'm definitely not improving because it's basically getting more and more long-running SQL queries. Yeah, so it's definitely interesting. Less interesting is, as a developer, as someone who is analyzing this, how do I go further? And you might say, well, there is a topic on that. There's analyze further in KQL. Well, this KQL is not really, in my opinion, useful. It's not the KQL this report is based on. It's just a KQL that has similar data about the tab that you're actually experiencing at the moment. So to go a little bit further in details is not that easy based on this Power BI report. That's my experience. Again, this session is all about my experience, all about me. That's the Power BI part. So from the moment you have a burning question, you might be able to just have one go-to report and just look into that. I would suggest to look into KQL. Yeah, and there is a lot to say about KQL. This is, by the way, the boring part. KQL is basically a query language, custom query language, very performant. I'm actually always amazed when I start using that, how, first of all, easy it is to use, how easy it is to read. You just need to get used to that. Is anyone comfortable with PowerShell? I always compare this with a marriage PowerShell SQL. I don't know if that makes sense, honestly, but in PowerShell you get the pipe symbol. You use the pipe symbol in PowerShell. It's actually quite powerful. And the pipe symbol in PowerShell says, like, whatever happens in that previous statement, that output is streamed into the next statement, and that's what I will start with in my next statement. And it's pretty the same in KQL. You have that pipe symbol, and whatever I had before, like query, after the pipe, I will do something else with that. I will extend it with more data. I can filter it with the where clause, and I can do like a lot more with that. So that's pretty much how KQL is being built. This is completely useless, but an all-inclusive example, let's say. So. Yeah, so what does this do? I made a slide. Instead of me just typing, I decided to create a slide to give you some overview on what we can do with KQL. So first thing that you see here, I can create, let's say, variables and fill that variable with the output of a certain query. Basically, let's build a view, right? And then with that view, I can query later on in the same query. I can use data from even a JSON file. This is an example where I download from Dropbox a JSON file, read that as a table. Yeah? I can union two tables together, the traces table and the page views table. By the way, these are two tables that Business Central is filling with trace data, with signals. Yeah? And you can just union whatever you like, but be smart with that. I can extend. Within the query, I can build new fields containing values of other fields, maybe concatenating if something is true. So you got like, if execution time is that, then take that field. If the other one is not empty, then take that field. If that one is not empty, take that field. By the way, if you ever try to look into anything durations in Business Central, naming conventions is far away, let's say. Sometimes a field is called duration, sometimes a field is called execution time, then a field is called, server execution time, and then we have something like total time. So why not just duration? Every single time? Well, no, but you can fix that, because you can create yet another field. I did elapsed time, and I just take, in the order I like to take, whatever field I would like. And that is actually what this snippet is. Yeah? You can join. Like, if you have built two tables, you can join both tables. So in this case, I had my signal definitions, which was a JSON file. I will show that in a minute. And I've got my other table, being the traces union with the page views, and I can join them together. Like, if I have an event view, an event ID in one, I can take the message from my JSON file and put that in the same query. Yeah? It's very much SQL that you're doing here. You can filter, obviously, locally. By the way, best practice is to filter as soon as possible. I'm doing a very bad job here. I'm filtering very late. Yeah? And you can summarize. Very important, you will use this a lot. That's what analytics is all about. You're trying to analyze and total and average and whatnot. So you're going to summarize. In this case, I'm counting the records by timestamp. Bin timestamp 1 day, which automatically creates a timestamp, which can be like a day time, 12 o'clock, 12:53 o'clock, and so many seconds. So the bin says, okay, round it down to whatever I say, in this case, a day. So it's very easy to be able to summarize per day. But you could do that, summarize per 15 minutes, or summarize per 1 hour. And that gives you a lot of possibilities in trying to analyze. But just imagine, if I count, let's say, the amount of signals that I have for every hour, I can see the busy hours. Yeah, the more signals, the more busy my Business Central is. And it's that easy actually to get around telemetry. So, all clear? We are KQL experts now? Well, okay. We will see a lot more, as I promised, a disgusting amount of KQL. But I will only point to what I think is the interesting parts of the part. I mean, I'm not going to explain these kinds of queries. That doesn't make sense. How I will do that is the ADE part. Remember, that was KQL/ADE. ADE stands for Azure Data Explorer. I'm not good in Power BI. I'm a little bit better in this. And you'll see why. Because this is, in my opinion, this has blown my socks off. As software being as user-friendly as it can be. I rarely see software that is as user-friendly as the Azure Data Explorer has been for me the last couple of weeks. I got to know it, thank you, Duilio, when I was in a call with him 3 weeks ago, and I was like, okay, shift delete all demos what I prepared for TechDays. I will rebuild everything in Azure Data Explorer. So thank you for that extra work as well, Duilio. So what is it? It's actually a fully managed platform that you can use for free. I triple-checked that. I wasn't sure yesterday because you made me wonder. But I mean, I'm not paying anything. So you can use it for free for application insights. You basically get online data, online queries. It does that in an asynchronous way, yeah. And that's pretty much how you can manage all your queries. Let me just show you one thing. 3 weeks ago, I was doing this. I had not this, well, also this, but anyway, let me first go to my, here. So I had this thing here, waldo.bc telemetry. It's a repository on GitHub, and this was really just my go-to set of queries. Whenever I had a problem, copy, paste, and I was basically copy-pasting all over the place. Just an example here, if I had a performance, I needed to look into, let's say, deadlocks. I had my set of queries. I just took like, okay, what is the customer most or the most deadlocks per customer kind of thing. Select everything, and I would go to here, my actual application insights, go to logs. Let me just do it. Paste, run. That's kind of like what I kept on doing. And I kept improving those queries, pushing that to the repository so that I kind of like got a decent overview. Yeah, well, I'm not having deadlocks on this demo environment, but anyway, I kept on doing that. That was my go-to tool. That's what I was doing telemetry. Since we have now Azure Data Explorer, you need to see this as a dashboard where all of these queries are just there and pre-run. All I need to open is the dashboard. Very similar to the Power BI report. You might say, well, why don't you just use the Power BI report? That's free by Microsoft also. You'll see. Okay, so extremely user-friendly, all that, and it actually supporting the tools that you really wanted to support. So let's take a small look into this Azure Data Explorer, and you can see that I'm actually quite excited to do so. Yeah. Where is it? So this is basically. Yeah, I will start here. Azure Data Explorer is basically just let's say, a dashboard. Not really a dashboard, it's just an endpoint that I can use to do querying of a certain, in my case, application insights database. Maybe zoom in a little bit. And on the left you see already the same 7 endpoints that I was talking about. These are all the endpoints that I'm using in my company. As I promised, live data. I can simply set that up by an endpoint ADE application inside IO and point to my subscription where I host that application insights. When I've done that, I can connect with a certain user ID and then I get access. Yeah, my user has access to my telemetry. That's a good start. And now I have a query window. You might say, yeah, well, this is quite the same as what we have in the logs. True. What I like about this most is it keeps my my queries open. So when I close this tab and tomorrow I open it again, the same queries are there, the same tabs are there. There's already a very big difference. Yeah, and I can simply start to like do other things like. Yeah, I'm not going to do that, but it pretty much comes down to that. From here I can, let's say, you see IntelliSense is there, the shortcuts are there. Shift Enter executes a certain query. Control Enter sets a new line with the pipe symbol. I mean, it's like you have a decent coding experience, and again, it saves your query and your access. Well, I like that a lot. But what else is quite interesting is the fact that you can, yeah, the resolution is a little bit off. You can pin this to dashboard, and you might say, okay, I have dashboards on application insights. Yeah, but you don't have these dashboards. So you can create your own dashboards. Let me go to that. I created one for Business Central, for BC TechDays, and yeah, you see, all of these queries that I might have in my repository, they are simply there, and they're already executed. So, I mean, no copy pasting, they are just there. Oh my God. I mean, and remember, this is still quite the same than Power BI, sure, but can you do this with Power BI? So I can. For every single thing that I have here, and I will show you more things, for every single query that I have here, I can actually view the actual query. And not just that, I can simply say, okay, I will take this query, and I will create a new query tab. And this is what I think is really analyzed further. Yeah, I take the actual query, I can now do whatever I would like to do. And maybe I have no idea where the details come from here, like it's events, parameters, whatever that is. I will go to my query window, I copied that query, and maybe I just remove the summarization. I can put that in comment, execute the query again, and I get the actual details without the summarization. So how does it summarize? Why do I get that? And so on. Yeah, and it's not always slow, by the way. Summarization is a good thing to do to make it not too slow. All right. More. This actually, it says parameters. You can work with parameters, and you see those parameters actually on top of here. I can actually create ways that I like for myself. I like to filter my data. Like what I do a lot is filter the data on tenant description, something that I came up with, which is that domain that you can also set up with that tenant mapping. Yeah, but basically just now for this. So what you can do is, if I go to edit my dashboard, you can, for instance, go into edit mode, and this is basically how the query now looks like. And you see here that I use an underscore message filter. Well, that is actually one of the parameters. I can set up my own parameters, whatever I like. And I've set these up. Company filter, time range, that tenant description thing. Now this message filter is actually just a string, and that's it. So I can type whatever I want in message filter, and I can use that in my query as well. So I'm basically extending the ability to use my query. Yeah. And obviously these are parameters that I can reuse in my other queries. So that makes it actually quite interesting. One parameter you get out of the box is the time range. Very interesting and very necessary one. You always want to filter on a time. You don't want to see, usually don't see all the data from 90 days or whatnot you have in your database. That's always a slow query. So you always want to range the time. So that's one query you can always filter. Again, in the beginning of the trace. Yeah. That's parameters. You could also have base queries. Quite interesting. I didn't know. I only knew when I finished like 75% of my queries, and I was like, I'm always doing the same crap, always the same things, always all of these filters there, and always extending the same fields that I would like to see and work with in my queries. So I was like, what is this base query all about? Now, this base query is actually, let's call it a view that you can set up that you can constantly call in your other queries. Yeah? So I've set up a view that by default calls external data, JSON files, so signal definitions. I got here a JSON file with signals. Yeah? Thank you, Dwilio, once again. He built that JSON file. So this is basically a JSON file that, yeah, you see, it contains all the signal IDs with a decent area and a decent description. Yeah. I also built one for my tenant ID. Remember the tenant mapping. So for any tenant ID, I now have a decent description once again. This is that tenant description. By the way, these are fake. This is actually a way how I now obfuscate my data. All tenant IDs are fake. I cut two digits, let's say, and all names are fake. But I created a query, a base query for that. And that base query, I basically always take all traces and all page views. I, by default, will filter on the parameters that I already have. Yeah. So also on that message filter. I extend, so I create new fields. What I think makes most sense, event ID, I always extend, yeah? But the same for extension name. The same for all of these durations I was able to find. Execution time, which you sometimes have server execution time, total time, durations, and whatnot. So you find all of these, and later on, I will use all of these and build yet another field with elapsed time. So I basically have one field I can work with for timings in the base query. So now all of a sudden I have that field at my disposal for whatever I want to do. And I don't have to think about, yeah, now in this case it's elapsed time, now it's duration, and now it's execution time and whatnot. Yeah? And this is the obfuscate part, where I basically just take away from the 36 character one character. So yeah, I had to do that, and I obfuscate my extension names a little bit. Not really important. And yeah, all in the end, I will join everything together in one decent table. Long story short, you only need to do this once. And for the rest of your queries, you can simply point to this as being a view. So instead of traces, what you would do is, let me see. This one, for instance, base customers. So in this case, I will do the entire query that is a base query, and just on top of that, a little bit more, especially for this. Yeah? Isn't this blowing your socks off? Yes. Cool. I mean, this saves so much time in building queries and analyzing queries and all that. The outcome of this, by the way, so you have seen if I do this, the query is very readable. It's very like, okay, I do all that crap that Waldo just explained, and on top of that, I will summarize, count, and whatnot, whatever this is. Yeah. If you really look at the output of this query, this is actually just more complicated. If you really look at the query, you'll see that it builds that entire base query, including the filters I set on top. Yeah, and then all in the end, it will just call that. Yeah. It takes a few seconds to understand this big query, but it's actually all just a concatenation of the base query with whatever you did for especially this one. Yeah. I included the sanity check as well. Like, I just wanted to know, like, I'm building this big query and I'm filtering and all that, and I didn't really know anymore, like, do I have as many fields as I expected? Well, yes, so that's why the sanity check is here, which is a very simple query. I'm doing the base customers, I'm doing the trace union page views, and I'm compare both. So I still know that I get as many output as I would expect of. Okay, so you can do a lot now. So now we have like a nice tool that we can look into telemetry with. Cool. So let's dive a little bit into what we can use this for. First of all, performance. And I will do a few things. I will look a little bit into the slow stuff. I will look into the web service. You know it? Web service? No? Okay. Performance. Okay. The deadlocks is absolutely interesting. And if you do not know what deadlocks are, let me quickly explain. Deadlocks is very simple. You have two processes, always. One process is locking resources in a certain order. Another process locks pretty much the same resources in a different order. And at some point, the two processes are running at the same time, and at some point, they will lock each other, right? And you kind of like have two resources waiting on each other. What SQL Server will do, just throw an error for one and let the other one pass. What you have is one error, and the other one you don't have any info from. So the idea from deadlocks and how to get to analyze deadlocks is to get to those two processes. That is your challenge, let's say. So we're going to have a look at that. We have this lock timeouts, yeah, that we can do with or can look into with telemetry. And definitely also, we can do some code analysis. We can look into, let's say, some SQL queries to look into some things that we might want to improve in our code. So let's have a look. Again, obviously, with the Azure Data Explorer. And I have some slow stuff here. And the idea for the slow stuff thing, and it's slow, as you can see. Oh, come on. That I would look into this slow anything. I'm not really looking for a very specific thing that's slow. I'm just looking for a duration that takes the longest. Yeah. So remember that elapsed time field, that's what I will use here. So the slowest anything per customer. And you can already guess typical things is like the AL method. Again, this is live data, so I have no idea what will show up. But yeah, this is a typical thing. The AL method, I usually never look at slow AL methods anymore because that's just slow users that don't close a page. A run modal is a code line from a certain method. That method will take a long time when you do not close that page. So yeah, you get a lot of those, like these print dialogues and all of that. But yeah, what I see here is like this web service call. So there's like slow, the last hour, I had a few slow web service calls. Sure. I would be able to look into that. Again, I can look into that tenant description. By the way, what you might notice now, I get actually a drop-down list from existing tenant description. This is also something you can do with that parameter thing. The parameter is not just a text. I can also make the parameter a query. Yeah, a query, which is in this case a simple summarization of all existing tenant descriptions for this time. So you really can take even in the parameters your filters into account. Man, come on. Amazing. Okay, cancel. I will not save this, please. So yeah, I would then like say like, maybe in this customer that is not really the best one, so euro, I will filter on that one, and you kind of like are focusing all of your next steps on that one customer. What else is interesting? Very important. What you see here, source process and slow object. Two fields. What if I can identify from telemetry what is the process that's causing a problem and what is the object that's being slow? Two different things, by the way. Process could be item list, opening an item list, or could be posting an order. And the slow object could be one query down the line back in that process. So that's actually very interesting to look into, well, in my opinion. And how do we do that? So, something I stole from Microsoft. What you can do is look into the stack trace. In many of these events, you get a stack trace. This stack trace is from bottom up the process. So you could say the bottom line, wait a minute, yeah, the bottom line is the start of your process. Yeah, this is where you will see, code unit.run or whatever, the code unit that is starting the process, starting that method. Yeah. The top is where everything is slow. So the slow object is the top of the call stack. So it's just a matter of analyzing this call stack. So you see that here, in the call stack is just a big text. So we split that text on the new line. So now it becomes an array. Yeah. We get the length of the array. Yeah. So we can use that further on in the query. And then we start to analyze. A bunch of regex going on. For top of the call stack, I need to get the object name, the object type, the object ID, the line number, and all that. Again, I stole this, I didn't write this. And for the same for the bottom of the call stack. And all in the end, when you analyzed everything, you can set up like something, a source process, which is in concatenation of what I do, whatever is bottom of the call stack, the object type, some brackets and whatnot. A predefined string, how I want to identify that exact moment in time. Source process is the bottom, and the slow object is the top. Yeah. So down the line, my query, now I have two fields, source process and slow object that I can use to start to display. Yeah. And that is exactly what I do here. So these are the last slow SQL calls, and I can look into what source process, apparently calc available things, default Business Central. That is a surprise. And then the slow object. And you can see like page openings and so on. But this is obviously now interesting because now you can analyze like what is my slowest object? Or what is my biggest problem being the process that causes most problems, yeah? Because you have these two fields in the query and can simply summarize on it. Other things that slow is obviously pages. Remember the page views you can look at. Well, I sometimes do a session. I ask what is the slowest page typically. I think typically it's the item list. I see item list and sales order popping up every single time on top of the list. And it's pretty normal in our case because we did extend the item list quite a lot. But yeah, we tend to use the item list as being a report. And just put all fields that we think is interesting on the item list, which is not a good idea, by the way. Some performance information on API calls. Again, I will take this customer, but yeah, for API calls, that's typically when we go into a typical event ID. RT0008 is interesting because that's the event that shows the incoming API calls. And one thing I need to say about this is that you do have information on the query filter. So you can have an overview on how your third-party partners are using your APIs. And I can promise you they are not always using that in the best way. Yeah? You cannot get to the body. unfortunately. That is like GDPR stuff. But you can get to the query filter, and I've had lots of issues that basically they are using the wrong fields to filter on. And you can simply improve that by indicating, like, look, can you now use that other field to filter on, or use the last modified date time, or create an index for what they do a lot. Yeah. Deadlocks. In the deadlocks part, again, this is a very typical, I'm going to need a few more hours here, I think. A very typical thing where we want to look into that source process. Remember, we are always talking about two processes. We need to identify those processes. Yeah. So now, deadlocks, we only see one problem. We need the second. You won't. So the only thing that we can do is capture them, as many as we can, for a certain customer, and then sometimes SQL will say, now you're dead, and now and other times SQL will say, now you're dead. So you need that data. You need to wait to have enough data to make that analysis. I will take 2 days, because I don't get too much information. I will select all customers. What is very important here on deadlocks, that's also why I put the other field here. If you have an overview, you see the most deadlocks I get in Bumsus Medical, LiveSmart, they are version 21, 22. Yes, you can get to the server version that your customers are using it. So you can get a look at what version is my customer working in. This is tri-state logging. Version 23 removed 90% of our deadlocks. If your customers are still using version under 23, please upgrade them. It's a big change. Yeah, proof is right here. Log timeout is pretty much. No, sorry, I need to scroll down a little bit so I can show you some overviews. This is actually quite a nice one, so you can actually have some kind of overview on what is my biggest problem, what source process causes the most of my deadlocks, and what slow object, being the locking object, causes the most of my deadlocks. You can have an easy overview. By the way, again, view query, and you start to analyze from there. It's amazing. Same for log timeout, pretty much the same there, where you can look into the source project, what is causing that lock the most of the times, what is locking at the end of the process, and how can I act on that. Yeah. Last but not least, the performance analysis. You can look into the SQL data. So you could reason like, whatever statement I get, let's have a look. What kind of AL statement could be causing that SQL statement? And there are a few, like partial records. You can figure out how many commas you have in a select statement. And that kind of like says how many columns you have in a select statement. And that might indicate that you're not using select loaded or set loaded fields. You're not using partial records at that point. So it's a very simple query that counts that and just displays that a certain way. That's not really that important. But you get an overview where, the number of columns is most here. So we have an extension, it's my extension, that we simply did not set load fields at this point. With a bit of luck, we have actionable things, and yes, I made sure of that, because what is actionable? Something that I can change. So if I have a stack trace, there is code behind the scenes. If there is no stack trace, then it might be just a page that I'm opening or something else. Yeah? But if there is a stack trace, now all of a sudden there is code, and I can change code. So I make sure that I only get the ones that are actionable, so I know that this one is something that I can change. Yeah? And we have some ISVs that I might want to look into, but most of them is ours. Crap. Okay, we can look at other things like locking. Not just the locking that I just talked about, but locking is empty. Are we still having queries with is empty that is locking? And it's very simple. If I get a select top one null and an update lock in the SQL statement, I have a locking is empty. you do not want locking is empties. So you would like to look into that and do some read isolation. Yeah? So yeah, it's helping developers to identify what can be improved in the product. Same for calcsums. If you have a locking calcsums, you might want to avoid that. Yeah, I don't. Yes, finally some good news. Same for counts, and you can simply get to the counts wherever we count, select count as a count, and see where it's locking. Yeah. So, I've got some slides here, basically an overview of what we just saw. The slow stuff, again, I'm actually just interested in anything slow, so that is the concatenation of whatever field by Microsoft is called. I just put it in one field, elapsed time, and that's the one I will do some queries on. And then the web service performance, yeah, there are some interesting things, obviously endpoint as well. You can figure out like what is the application that is using it by the endpoint. Sometimes I get, yeah, but I don't know the source. Who is the source that's calling my? Yeah, you don't know. You cannot see the source. But in my opinion, you should always create a custom API specifically for any source that wants to call your API. Never use API v2. Doesn't exist. Microsoft's API. It's nice to copy-paste from, but you lose your grip on how people are using your system, and it has too many openings as well. In any case, endpoint is interesting, and obviously a lot more. Query filter I find particularly interesting, especially for performance problems. Then you get maybe something like this. This is what I noticed yesterday evening, like, whoops, something happened. So the amount of API calls that we had at a certain point at 2 o'clock, yeah, by the way, did I mention that ADE is amazing? This was a shortcut to an actual tile in my dashboard, including the filters I put on that dashboard. What? Come on. So you'll see here the same query in like a few hours. Yeah, there it is. Obviously now it's a little bit back in time. Yeah, the other screenshot was 2 o'clock, and you can start to analyze. Look at this. What do you see? Chat reports. Users are using the system. You might be paying for the telemetry of that system. So users create a chat reports report, let's say creating like 30 million signals a day, and you're paying for that. So you might want to take a look at the amount of signals your users all of a sudden cause just because they created the report. In this case, this is like something I need to manage. Yeah? All right. Deadlocks, we talked about this. Again, information about the version of the user or the version of the customer is actually quite important. And this is not by coincidence that anything below version 23 is having more deadlocks than from version 23. Yeah. Make sure that deadlocks on-prem is configured to capture. On-prem, it's not on by default. On SaaS, it is. So you need to do some extra PowerShelling to set it up on-prem. Yeah. On the log timeouts, again, different kinds of things. What I didn't show you, you do have insights on the actual lock. What was the locking snapshot? What was locking? What resources and who was locking at that point? You do have information on that in telemetry as well. And on-prem, again, you need to enable that. On-prem, you don't get that data out of the box. Yeah? Enable the log timeout monitoring on-prem. Just do it. Don't think about it, do it. You'll need it. Especially if it's not version 23, you need it more. And again, for code analysis, yeah, there are possibilities to look into the SQL. I actually only am looking into SQL to see what AL might be executing. And again, there for the locking part, in many cases, read isolation is going to be your solution. It's very now easy to track the code and the used code at your customers, thanks to telemetry, and you will be able to change your PTE and your ISV app as well. Okay, custom telemetry. We are able to create our own telemetry. Do you do that? Do you create your own telemetry? That's actually quite a lot. That's good. So you create your own signals. Makes all the sense in the world. We can we can simply use session.log message, come up with our own event ID, set up everything we need to know, including custom dimensions. We can add whatever we like. And we can call yet another field duration, if you would like to do that. We have these default dimensions that comes out of the box, so don't create these. They are there already. Yeah. And remember, or not remember, just know that there is also something, an engine already there that we can use, being the telemetry logger. Not saying you should use it, just know that it exists and you have some possibilities, or some extra possibilities there. The idea of the telemetry logger is that you are able to set up your own, let's say, engine, that you basically add more telemetry specifically for your product, for instance. It might look something like this, that you implement the telemetry logger interface. It works a little bit complicated. I'm not going to go too deep into that. It comes down to the fact that you implement your own log message. Yeah. So you see here on the first line in comment, you see a comment that I can add my own custom dimensions. Just an example on license status, like what if I always want to include license status information or whatnot information from my product by default. Yeah. And then call the system.log message. It's just the central endpoint to add more custom dimensions. You can only do that for one publisher. So you are a company, usually you have one publisher in your app JSON, and for multiple apps it's going to be the same publisher, that's one company. Well, you just need to make sure that you can only have one code unit doing this. That is how the system is being set up. Done that, you are able to, when you call the telemetry.log message, which is what you should use, Microsoft will figure out, oh, there is a registered publisher, that is the implemented interface, I will run that log message, and then your code will be added. It's a little bit complicated, honestly, it took me a while to figure that out, but yeah, know that it exists. What can we do with that in practice? Tests. Now just imagine, telemetry on tests. We are all already doing automated tests. Are we doing that? Yeah. We are all doing tests. Let's just assume we're all doing tests. Now let's add into the mix durations, number of SQL statements. And you kind of like get an overview on how tests are acting out in the passing of time. So I did that. This is just an example. This is not the actual code, but it's just example code. I copy-pasted. Just imagine, yeah, not going to spend too much time on that, but you have these events in the test framework. Yeah, on the runner, there is an event on run test, on after run test. And you can actually figure out, I'm actually compiling for the different levels, so per suite, per code unit, and per method, a start-stop. So I can measure a method, I can measure a code unit, and I can measure a suite in the amount of SQL statements that were executed and the duration that it took. Just added that on the framework, yeah, and all in the end, I will send the telemetry with the custom dimensions that I like to have. So now I invented a new one, duration in milliseconds. And this actually results in an overview, all my test runs the last 24 hours. Let's take 7 days, yeah? And you kind of like can see some kind of regression testing. Now what I'm doing here, we have 8,500 tests. I didn't want to have 8,500 lines on this graph. So this is actually a pretty complicated query. What I'm doing is I will take the worst, the most different, the top 10 most differences, right? But the thing is, what you want here is, in regression testing, you always want a stable line. It needs to be stable. It needs to be always the same amount of SQL statements. And from the moment there is some kind of difference, you would like to know that. So I'm cheating here a little bit. If I take this for the last 30 days, you see that I did have a problem at some point. You see here, for instance, that this test, yeah, good luck, FIFO bin ranking test.given bin content with FIFO ranking disabled when calc FIFO data then check, and so on. That's the function name. Sorry about this, but it explains where it is. It's that exact test. All of a sudden, on June 1st or May 30th, took more SQL statements. And that's actually the thing that I would like to know. Yeah? You can just enable that. Install the app, extra telemetry, and all of a sudden you have regression testing of the performance of the test you're already executing every single day. How cool is that? So, 3 levels, I explained that. And it will be soon. I created actually an idea, or I'm trying to create a pull request at Microsoft to add this in the product, so that basically it will be there out of the box. Do know, if you want to use this, then you need to make sure that when you run tests, that you have set up an application endpoint, of an application insights endpoint for that container when you're running, or where you are running the tests. Another idea, application performance, pretty much the same. Let's just say you are, you just foresee a framework with a start, stop, and you are able to plug it in anywhere, right? To measure performance of anything. So that is actually what I did here. Very simple code unit with a start measure and a stop measure. Yeah? Which are now, when you stop the measure, you're basically again going to emit a signal where you just add duration, not in milliseconds, because I really like to find or like to use Microsoft's design rules, like always find a new way to describe duration. In any case, and then you can send that to telemetry. By the way, this is bad practice. Always find the same name. And this is just an example here where I put that in. So on before post-sales doc, on after post-sales doc, I'm measuring and I'm sending that post-sales doc measure. Now you get the ability, sorry, now you get the ability to show that. So this is an example. Let me reset this for a minute. Okay, nice example. Ah yeah, my fault. I need to put an extra filter, measured function, because else I got too much. So let's say the sales orders. And I can compare the amount of times certain customers are posting sales orders. But obviously also I can compare the performance of posting a sales order, maybe in time, over multiple days per customer. Cloud is not always as fast as you would like it to be, but sometimes it's just cloud. So now you can kind of like have a look, like posting sales orders is slow at that customer. Is it slow at other customers? And you can have that comparison as well. And if it's slow at all customers, you might realize like, yeah, it's a cloud thing. Yeah. So again, the regression part or the per date, per tenant, whatever you would like to make that happen. The nice thing is you measure that for all the customers, you capture that, and that's kind of like possible for any kind of method that you are able to do that. Another idea, daily telemetry. So I don't know if you're aware, but on SaaS, you have this code unit always in job queue. Did you ever notice that? Yeah, Now, this job queue doesn't do much. It actually just sends a signal. No, it raises an event, the on-sent daily telemetry event. And Microsoft has subscribed to that event for two reasons. For monitoring sensitive fields, I still have to figure out what that usage is. I have no idea. I can't figure out how I can tap into that, but in any case, for sensitive fields, and then the onboarding signals, whatever that means. But you can tap into that as well, right? So, what if missing indexes? You know what that is, right? Per customer, you can open that page, but I mean, that's per customer. Maybe for product-wide, for all customers, I would like to know what is the most missed index for all customers. So why not emitting a daily signal that just shows all missing indexes? Yeah. Same for orphans. Did you ever have media orphans? I think more will have media orphans. The thing is, do we know? Do we really know? We are creating media orphans actually without us knowing doing so. And what is the media orphan? So the media table and the media set table contains an ID that points to a blob field with a picture. And this ID is actually being pointed to or used in, like, say, item picture or customer picture or whatnot. There are situations that this ID simply does not have any record anymore in the database that it's linked with. So actually, it's just sitting there. There's nothing ever showing that picture anymore, ever. So it's just eating up database space. Yeah? A typical thing is if you have a batch import of pictures, that might cause this. Stefan talked about validation field. This is one of the reasons why you want to do validations. From the moment you don't do validations, either modify, delete, validate, this is what you will get. You get inconsistent data. This is inconsistent data. Yeah. Yeah, you can set now, these days, I think from version 2021, we have this media.find orphans, media set.find orphans, which is actually just a simple AL statement that gives you a list of GUIDs. And these GUIDs are pointing to the actual medias that do not have any record in the database anymore that points to that media. Yeah, you can find an overview for that. So let's have a look on this daily telemetry, where I created just an overview on the missing indexes. This is just an example, but the nice thing is I can maybe ask this for the last 30 days. Don't just start creating indexes. You shouldn't be doing that. The reason why this exists is to start creating the most missed index. Yeah, an index that's only missed for one day. Let's not just create that. But you kind of like can get a picture on, like in this case, in the customer ledger entry, this index would be interesting. And I'm missing that. And obviously, again, same information. You have that per customer. This is for all customers. And you can start to group and look into what's interesting to start creating in my product. And you can also see which customer that is. Same for media orphans. And I think I can show you that if I go back far enough. Look at this. So all of a sudden, at some customer, I mean, this is live data. I'm not making or faking this. At some customer, we all of a sudden had like, what is it? Close to 6,000 or 7,000 orphans. So we still need to fix that. We also see that. But yeah, I don't know what happened here. But at this customer, we really need to look into what happened and what caused it. It can be different things. This customer, we already removed them. You see that? So we already removed that, and we have kind of like that overview. So yeah, definitely interesting stuff to look into, if you ask me. If you create your own custom, these are all custom APIs, telemetry signals. If you create your own, there are some best practices. Treat your telemetry or your custom telemetry as an API. You shouldn't be breaking them. Don't change the ID. Don't change the field names that you have in your custom dimensions and these kind of things. Document them. I have an example here. We documented our internal telemetry signals, just simply an overview of whatever we have. Yeah. Make it actionable. Whatever signals you create, if it's useless, it's useless. Then don't create that. Yeah, make it that it is useful. Almost last, I have 10 minutes, okay, is something that's for developer. If we're talking telemetry for developers, what I think is very important, and I did a workshop about that the first days in this week, about the Business Central Performance Toolkit. Do you know what it is? Honestly, do you know what it is? Do you use it? Oh, come on. Yeah, it's very not really much used in the community, unfortunately, but it is useful as something. Whoops. So yeah, what it is, it orchestrates performance. Yeah, no, it orchestrates how users are using the system, and then you can follow up on the performance by doing that. So just imagine, in 3 months, you have a new customer that you know is going to be a challenge. Let's just say they have 100 users all working in 2 tables. Sales header, sales line. And you doubt like, it's online, I need to do some developments there. 100 users constantly working in 2 tables, sales header, sales line, one of the most heavy tables in the system. I might want to follow up on whatever I change in the system coding, like in the PTE or product. I might want to follow up on the change in performance. That's actually exactly what this toolkit is for. Now, most of us have been using this by the start button. Just start and setting it up, start. Setting something else up, start. And then we forget about it. No, that's not how we should use it. Now, imagine that we run this automatically. Every single day, we run this toolkit. Yeah? Sorry. Yeah, okay, I forgot about this slide. My apologies. So this slide... Okay. This is what I wanted to get to. My apologies. The toolkit, just now imagine we run this every single day. Yeah? And we run this in every single context that we can run this. What is the context? So now just imagine every single day we have this set of tests. You see it on the right. A test for 3 people doing just cost entry, for 3 people doing calculate plan worksheet, for 3 people opening the custom list, for 3 people, and so on and so on. We can set it up however we like. Now we can run that test in a context of just default Business Central. And again, measure durations, measure number of SQL statements for every single code unit. And now we can do the same for the context, our product. And again, the same test, and we measure the same things. And then we do the same for that customer and those customer customizations. And again, every day, running the same test, measuring all of these things. That's when we are following up on performance. That's when we are setting a baseline to measure, to compare these different contexts and see what is actually changing. So I have an example for that. Let me see. Yeah, I will just show the end result because of timing issues. Let me try to find it. So what we created is actually a Power BI report of the end result, in this one. And you see here number of SQL statements for a certain customer. Yeah, and maybe this is a better graph to show. So for creating sales orders with 20 lines, you see here a baseline. The below line is what is the daily run for the base app from Microsoft. Again, I'm always executing the same code. The gray line is our product. The purple line above is the customer. And you see it's quite stable. You want horizontal lines again. Yeah? But obviously, from the moment this starts to deviate, this is where you would like to take action. Yeah? I cannot show you an example where it deviates. This was actually part of the problem, not really a problem. I was like, okay, we are doing all this work and we are following that up and we do a daily check and all that. There was no problem. So can I now go live? So I was, again, this was proof of concept. So we went live and we actually are quite happy and the customer is quite happy with the performance. This was a real case scenario, 100 people working in 2 tables on a daily basis and actually in SaaS and not a problem. Yeah. The actual problem in that customer is the fact that he has 600,000 items. Try to work in a sales order with that drop down and 600,000 items. That was a problem. Okay. Okay, I got some other ideas which I'm not able to implement. API routes, I'm not able to look into the table of API routes. It's an on-prem table, so I cannot create statistics on that, but I would like to. I would like to follow up on extra APIs that's being installed at our customers, for instance. Table information would be interesting, that I can look into table information and how big a database is getting. Like you have this orphans. At that point, I would see the database grow because there are new items overwriting the other ones. So those are things. You see there are some links. I put them in some ideas at Microsoft. I think we can solve them on Microsoft level, so because they can read on-prem tables. And then, yeah, Stefano Demiliano, he blogged about this monitoring for field changes. That was the default functionality. I think we can do more with that we can avoid changelog and maybe do field monitoring on telemetry level, maybe, as an idea. Last but not least, I got 2 minutes. That's more than enough. The question I always get, this extra telemetry, all of these things, you showed that jet reports thing that you all of a sudden have 1 million or more. We had at some point 30 million a day signals just added by jet reports. How can I follow up on that? How can I avoid that? And how do I do cost control? Because this database is filling up, almost exploding, and that kind of like can burn a hole in my wallet. No? Okay. Well, you can do cost control. And I think the best way to do that is not by limiting your signals per day. I would never recommend to do so, honestly. Because if you limit the amount of signals a day, which you can do, then you're missing out on signals, which you might find important. Yeah? I would rather try to analyze what signals you are interested in and what you're not interested in. You can set up data collection rules. Yeah, that's actually, I'm going to show that very quickly. Very easy. When you found it once, you will find it again. If you go to your application endpoint, this is just a demo endpoint. Yeah, you can go to the workspace. This is actually the backend of your application endpoint. It contains tables, which is the database, and you will recognize the traces table and the page view table. These are actually the only 2 that Business Central is sending anything to. Yeah. What you can do here, right mouse click, you can create transformation. You can create transformation rules. So you can create a new rule that maybe says like avoid telemetry, for instance. Done. Next. And then set up a transformation editor. This is again KQL that is going to decide which you allow. Yeah? That means this guy blogged about it, read the blog, and this is actually what I made of it. So this is, you see the source again. That's basically everything that comes in, and now you need to define what you're going to allow. This is the actual what we use. So we don't allow authorization. I'm not interested in that, except for one customer. So that's that one customer where I accept it for. Why? Because I enabled that because he had authorization issues. I needed to get some more statistics on that. Yeah. Same for SOAP, same for API calls. I'm actually just disabling all API calls. I don't want to see any of them because it's a crap load of them and usually they just succeed. Yeah. Except some customers, because we had some performance issues with them, except in our case eForm, which is our own API, which I would like to be able to compare performance on multiple customers. And SOAP, I would like to know SOAP. So from the moment anyone is using SOAP, I will allow those. So this just displays a pattern that you would be able to apply in that collection rule. Yeah? And I think this is most readable. It's difficult to come up with something that's readable enough, still have exceptions and all that. I'm 1.5 minutes over time. I do want to throw this still. Before I do that, I want to have a special thanks to Duilio. You hate it, right? Yeah. Thank you so much for your input. It completely changed the session as well. And I've got some other resources, including Duilio, including mine. The dashboard that you have seen is online, is in that BC Telemetry repository. Duilio also has a dashboard. It's also online in his repository. And for the rest, these are all resources I could come up with. Are there questions? Come on, no. Are there questions in the top half of the line? Top half, sorry. I need to throw this in the top half. Does anyone just want to catch this? No? Okay, here, you were first.
The session title was Telemetry for Developers. Do you know of any events or any use cases where you would use telemetry right from your development environment, emit it, and right away analyze them? And not just like deploy to customers, then wait a few days and act upon that? I mean, right during development where telemetry could be of any use?
No. I would have to think about that, honestly, and not from the top of my head. It's definitely interesting.
Maybe local test runs or anything?
Yeah, local then. But then you need to set up your test environment to have that specific endpoint and all that. So yeah, no, not out of the box, but yeah, it's an interesting approach. Yes. I will do it first, yeah. Basketball player.
I have an app inside in the app.json, and I am developing in a Docker container.
Yeah.
That emits telemetry.
Yeah.
And I can filter it.
Yeah,
with a trace or something like that.
It should admit the telemetry.
Okay.
Yeah. Depends also on your internet connection of your Docker container, obviously. So I cannot say anything about that, but it should.
By default, you know if it's enabled, the emit telemetry?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yep. I would like to add something and then a question. Waldo showed us telemetry for Business Central, but if you're running on-prem, you should know that everything Microsoft throws out, there is telemetry. So you can do a health check on your NST servers, SQL, and yes, you get a better picture. And I love the fact that you're comparing customers, but that comes with a big but, right?
Big what?
But.
A big but?
Yeah.
I like big butts and I cannot lie.
No, like you get this tenant ID, but if you're running on-prem, it's, if I remember correctly, you can't get an ID if you're running on-prem with the.
No, on-prem it's a different story.
Yeah.
Yes, a big but for on-prem is that usually it's either default or common AAD tenant ID. Depends a little bit on how you set it up. You can get a decent tenant ID even if you're on-prem, but then you need to use ACS.
Yeah, multi-tenant. I think you can.
Sorry?
If you're running multi-tenant on-prem.
Oh yeah, then you need to do that. No, multi-tenant I don't know. Multi-tenant, as far as I know, I see tenant ID in a multi-tenant environment, on-prem. As far as I know, you just need to define your tenant decently so you can actually see that.
But a workaround could be that we have one application inside for each customer, but we could write query that can combine different applications insights.
Yeah, you can do that as well. That's much less performant. If you do that like for 100 customers, that's 100 connections. And I don't bother. I just put everything in one. But on-prem for sure is an issue in terms of identifying your customers. Do know you didn't see any company name. You have company names as well in many of the events. I just hid them. I mean, that's kind of like I need to hide them. And that's usually how I work, based on company name. Yeah. And that works for on-prem as well. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have a T-shirt? Did I draw it? No. Here now. Okay. Another one. Up there. Oh yeah, that's high enough. Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah, so I'm quite new to this topic of telemetry. So just from my understanding, so you showed us more like newer versions like Business Central 21 and so on. Is it possible to set up telemetry for older versions? I'm not sure.
I think it's 2019.
Okay.
That the first version is. I think you can see that. You can still see. Yeah. If you go to Business Central Telemetry and you skip the ads and the first Learn article, I think it says somewhere. Oh, did I? Oh no, here on the overview. It applies to Business Central 2019, release wave, and later. That is as far back as you can go.
Okay.
Yeah?
Thank you.
I think that's 15.
Sorry?
15? Oh, okay.
That's 16. I think this is BC 16.
16. So not 14. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah?
Thank you very much.
Shall we exchange?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ah! Okay. No more questions? Yes. Can I do it from here? I won't. Ja, ik zal het afronden. Hoppa. Sorry, I have the lights.
My fault. Okay, I'm also new to telemetry. I'm wondering if you are applying that application insights registration. Do you already have that preloaded stuff? If you connect to your, let's say, BC instance you are using with your customer or something?
We set up our environments on-prem with scripts, and they are just all preloaded, if that is what you mean. We set up our PTE apps with templates, and that's also preloaded. Okay. We set up our on-prem app manually, and that's just copy-paste.
Okay. So you really need to do development, so you have the telemetry data to analyze them, to be analyzed.
Yeah, we just make sure that every single live customer and app has an endpoint. Okay. So there is telemetry from starters. Yes, okay. Absolutely. Yeah. And we pay extra attention to that because I mean it's too important. That deadlock thing, right? The reason why I have a deadlock tab is because I had a deadlock issue. And we had like 300-400 deadlocks a day at the customer the day we went live, and there was no telemetry. We just didn't use telemetry at all. So there was not even data to look into it in the problem, right? So we had the problem, and we still needed to wait like a few days to be able to just analyze the messages. So you need to set it up and don't think about it. Just set it up. Yeah. Last question, because I just got that I really, yeah, sorry.
Hi, thank you. It's actually a follow-up. You said that you didn't use telemetry with this customer. What would be the reason for that? As far as I understood it,
I forgot. I mean, we just didn't. I mean, we didn't implement that workflow in our company. So not a single customer had telemetry at that point. It's wrong.
So,
I
so
mean,
if you set up telemetry once for your company, you can do it for all customers. Basically,
you need to set it up. Just back in the days, that's version 20, I think we were working at that point, and we just didn't care about telemetry at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Now we do. Yeah, thanks.